Though pockets of protesters are already at it, Nigerian youths organizing via social media set August 1 as the start of nationwide protest over hardship, echoing a growing trend of protest movements across the continent. From Kenya to Uganda and other countries, they demonstrate, they tweet, they post for better democracy. Despite differences regarding the background and nature of these protests, they are an expression of a growing crisis of frustration about failed promises, the enrichment of the political elite, and the undermining of democratic institutions. The latest report by Afrobarometer, an independent research analysis group on the state of democracy in Africa, confirmed what's already known, that Africans have become less satisfied with the way democracy works in their countries over the last decade, with the growing discontent linked to perceptions that economic conditions have worsened and that corruption and impunity have increased. To help contextualize the growing social unrest and possible ways forward, I'm joined on one slot by a familiar face on this channel, David Matsanga. He is an African affairs analyst. David, thanks as always for joining us.
Thank you very much, Felicity. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Always our pleasure to have you. Let's start with understanding from your viewpoint, what the underlying factors that are fueling the surge in youth-led protests across the continent?
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to pay tribute to those who have died as a result of this conflict, of this protest on the streets in Uganda, in Kenya, and other places. In Uganda, there was no death so far reported. But in Kenya, they lost quite a number of people. And in those other places where they intend to, I want to say to pay my condolences. But there is a growing trend across Africa that there is a problem, a very big problem that is coming. And most of the African states must prepare for this. The rate of unemployment, the percentages, out of 100, we have 40% to 60 to 50%, almost half of the population or 3/4 of the population are the younger generation. And we have not prepared ourselves for the last 6 to 7 years. We still have the same infrastructure. We still have the same state of governance, the same state of economic independence on cash crops that are supposed to bring in income. We have not diversified most of the things that can create employment. Then we have bad policies. Among some African countries, there are several bad policies of undemocratic tendencies. Another factor is that our democracy has not grown. Our democracy is only 67 years old, and you are bound to make several mistakes in these 67 years old. After Ghana got independence, we still have a lot to do. Evolution of democracy has not occurred in Africa. Tendencies, elections have become a problem. Every election in Africa, systems that we have imported from America, we have copied the American style of system, yet we are not tolerant to each other. Not everybody. Opposition in Africa calls the government enemy. Government calls the opposition enemy. This is where we have a big problem.
All right, you say our democracy have not grown. In that same report that I mentioned in my introduction, even though this was not originally where I wanted to go, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. They're saying there is an inclination towards a reception for military interventions in Africa. Some are saying this is a direct explanation for the dissatisfaction that we see. Others are saying, you mentioned, inferred yourself, that the kind of democracy we have is imported. What is your take on the kind of democracy that Africa requires at this time and the kind of democracy that you believe the young people are pushing for?
First of all, we should change the democratic system, the systems, the governance systems. First, we have copied American type of systems. If you look across 54 countries in Africa, out of the 54 countries, only few countries, like 5 to 6, can do a free and a fair election and then go without any killings, go without any outbursts, go without any burning, destruction of property, go without protests. Only about few, I can name them: South Africa, Ghana, Senegal, Liberia, Tanzania. Those are the only countries in Africa that do, and Mauritania also did a very good election peacefully. The rest of African countries have got what we call American system, presidential system, which has not gone well with Africa at all. It is important that African countries now look, all researchers go back and say, hey, what is this, that monster we brought on our continent? When people go for presidency, the presidential slot has become so competitive. So, Felicity, the presidential slot in Africa is what causes enmity. Everybody wants to become the president.
All right, David, let me interject and ask. I mean, most of the people watching, I want to believe, understand the kind of democracy that's being practiced in the presidential system in most cases. I want you to talk to us in an El Dorado, for instance. What kind of democracy are you thinking that the current crop of young people that make up almost 90% of the population are looking for?
They are looking for parliamentary style of systems. They elected their people where there is accountability, proportional representation. The South African model. Look at the South African model. The South Africans can elect a person, whoever has won, they sit down, they go to parliament. Let the people, the population, not elect the president. That is where we have a problem. Take, for example, Nigeria. People, Atiku, His Excellency President Tinubu,
but what are the chances that such dynamics can operate across board in the continent? Because the political situation in South Africa and the political situation in Nigeria, or should I say the context that are driving these political lights, is not the same.
We are trying to look at what sparks conflict. Felicity, we look for what is sparking the crisis. Most of the crises in Africa result from bad elections conducted by systems, presidential systems. Why I brought South African model is people select and go home and leave the members of parliament to select the president. The only place where successfully where presidential system has worked is Ghana. Ghana's presidential system has worked very peacefully. And where people don't beat each other, the winner says, I have lost, I have won. The loser says, I've lost, and reads today a conceding note. Most of the leaders in Africa who go for these elections, believe me or not, they don't write conceding notes. They all write winning notes. And we create a problem. Then it comes down to the people. The people are divided already in villages. The people are divided on their president did not win. If we have parliament, which is accountable, members of parliament going to select a president, that is one of the problems I have seen in all these countries where protests are coming. In Kenya, this was a very, very productive democracy in the Republic of Kenya. Kenya was one and is still one of the countries in Africa that has got no political prisoner in their cells. Nobody has been harassed because of politics. But where these protests sprang from is still what researchers must find out. So it is not, it is the problem of the system that generates no jobs, that generates no employment.
David, how can we go about changing this system? In the instance of South Africa you mentioned, the ANC has been in power for donkey years, and then you have others trying to grow. It still holds a majority. You have in most African countries parties that have been around for quite a while, or some that have grown in momentum over the years and continue to hold power. Some use political repression, corruption, and again, the lack of accountability. How are these driving these protests, and what can we do to begin to change the system so we can see maybe a reduction in the agitation we see today?
We need to go back to what we call a redemption strategy. Philistine, a redemption strategy is accountability, truth-telling, reconciliation, reparation. And another big thing, this will all create healing. Most of the states in Africa have not healed. Most of them still think of so many things that happen, so many dictatorships. Look at Congo. Congo can never heal. It has never healed. There is a war and ending. The youths will come on the streets. Most of the states in Africa need a redemption strategy. The healing, the accountability, truth-telling, reparation, restitution, and above all, reconciliation. We have not reconciled. If Germany went on talking about Hitler, Germany would have not been able to come out of the Hitler syndromes. We must come out of this type of thing that creates us the chaos, that triggers the conflicts on the streets. Look at China. 40 years ago, Philistine, China was the most poorest country with 200 million people, 40 years. Depending on one rice scheme in Africa, in my country, Uganda, we used to share rice with them. China went back to resetting. Most of the African countries need resetting. Most of the countries need to reset and find out where have we gone wrong. Is this democracy the correct democracy for us? The competitive democracy, is it correct for us? Or there is some sort of consensus democracy where people can agree that when the winner has come, this one is the winner. Let's support him. That type of democracy is what now Africa needs to look at. Otherwise, the one we have copied from Westminster, from America, or from Western countries that have lasted for 1,000 years is a disaster for us on Africa.
You know, the more you speak, the more I think about the framing of democracy and how we can maybe begin to, you know, break it down so we can decide how we want to go as a continent. But let's look at how the government is responding to these protests. How have they been doing this before now, in your view? And has anything changed in their responses over time that encourage the possibility that these protests will not turn violent?
First of all, some countries in Africa, like let me again give an example. There are countries in Africa where you want a demonstration and you are escorted very peacefully. Protests and the violence comes when two sides don't agree on the modus operandi. For example, in Britain, where I am, where I've been for 40 years, I have gone to several times to the police station to ask for permits. And they read for me a long list of regulations of what I should follow, which route to follow, where to go, and how I should discipline my demonstrators. I've been doing this for a long time in Europe, for multi-party systems to return to my country, Uganda. Now, in Africa, it depends on each policing systems. Are our police trained for force? Do we train police to shoot and kill? Do we train police to man the policing, behavior? How do you police? How do you man crowds? How do you make sure that the crowds are disciplined? You who is applying for the permit, you demonstrator who is coming to demonstrate, how do you, differentiate between the goons who are going to loot and create chaos, and then the police will come in to shoot? So it depends on different countries. I've seen in Africa, one of the countries, again, unfortunately, I'll give the example of South Africa. If Malema wants to move towards parliament or to want to protest against Ramaphosa, he's escorted. And after that, he goes back home. They don't burn property.
I mean, that is the ideal. That is the ideal for security to be provided for those who want to protest peacefully. We all know what has happened in Kenya and the outcome. Some are saying that's a win for youth-driven movement to change the system. I don't know how aware you are of the Nigerian situation at the moment, because my next question is going to be on that. There are those who argue, have you been following the situation in Nigeria in recent days ahead of the protest on August 1?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm aware of, yes, go ahead.
There are those who say that the Nigerian case so far, still staying with how government is responding, there's been mixed messaging. Some say from caution to threats and to coercion. How are they faring in your view so far in managing the situation from escalating? And do you think that come August 1, people in Nigeria, the young people in Nigeria, will still go out on the street?
Nigerian demonstrations have been successful. One of them is the SARS against the police, the corruption. It was very successful until the government of General Buhari decided to sack the police and disband the police force that was very corrupt. So what is happening at the moment, there are two angles, there are two forces that are causing chaos in Africa. External forces. We have to be very frank, and I should not be called here not to say that some of these people who in the Western Hemisphere who don't want people in Africa to unite also are behind some of this, but I'll come to that one later. Let me look at
I won't let that slide, David. I won't let that slide because that comment have been coming on. But this is not about, people are saying the reality on the ground is that people are unhappy. If this reality is not there, whatever influence you're talking about wouldn't have a foothold. So whether there is Western or external influence does not negate the fact that there are issues to be addressed. Don't you think so?
You are absolutely correct. Issues in Nigeria, when you look at Nigeria as a state, it has problems, and we have got to talk the truth. There is insecurity, there is hunger, there is ethnicity, there is banditry, there is ganganism, there is every type of thing you are looking for. There is corruption, rampant. There is now famine, hunger, killing people begging for food. A state in Africa with 200 million people begging for food. We have to tell Mr. Tinubu, wake up. Where is the food? Where did the food go? People, Nigerians have never begged for food. This unemployment, there are so many youths in Nigeria who are not unemployed. They need employment. And these are things that the president and the government of Nigeria should address. But they are not addressing them. They are not saying them. Now we see bits and pieces of people coming to give food. Where was this food? Where was this food when the younger men wanted it? Where were these jobs when the younger men wanted it? Why don't you put programs? I agree with you totally that some of the countries in Africa are let down. One of the countries that has let us down is your country. We look at you as a democratic state that can push Africa. We are proud of you. We are proud of your population. But you have got ethnicity. The army has turned on people, local people. It kills local people.
David, time is of the essence. I can't believe we've spent 20 minutes already and I've barely touched on the questions that I wanted to. So I'll just go ahead and ask quickly your perspective on the growing use of social media in mobilizing and amplifying youth protests, and of course, what this means, what the future will look like.
Social media is going to play a very vital role. And I'm telling you, there is no way one person is going to control social media at the moment. In Nigeria, you can't control it. Even if you break their SIM cards, there will be other people tweeting from very far away. This is happening and it is going to happen. We must be prepared for this. And the preparation, the government should not react by harassing people, by switching off the social media is impossible. The social media is playing a part. The younger generation, not my generation, we used to go demonstration physically. But now for the sake of Nigeria, out of about 200 million people, we have 120 million or so younger men, younger generation, the youth. Some of them have no employment. They don't know where to go. So what is their resultant factor? They go back to social media, which they spend time to talk to people, to heal their emotions. And
but don't you have fears? Don't you have fears? Because we know that there are, I can't quickly remember the name of the country now, but I know that some African countries have found a way to cut off the internet at some point during a crisis in their country. Do you suspect that that might become an occurrence with the growing power of social media for organizing these protests?
Yes, you are right. There are some countries that are trying to curtail the influence of social media by cutting off internet. But even if you cut off internet, you have not solved the problem. If you cut off internet, for example, in your country, if you cut off internet, there are people expressing themselves. There are people living on rivers, on water. There is a city in Nigeria where water flows in the streets all the time. What does the administration talk about that? People come from water to go to their houses to sleep. Surely, in a state of this nature, what do you expect the youth to do? As much as we want to defend, how long will you defend? There is a finicity, there is killings, there is no redemption. We have not done redemption. It looks like in Nigeria, especially, let me be honest, in Nigeria, since 1967, you have not redempted. You have not done redemption. You have not looked at truth-telling. You are hitting each other. The problem is coming back. The amount of corruption that is on the ground in most of African countries, there is a problem.
David, I want to ask you about something you mentioned earlier, and that's building democratic institutions, because at the heart of all this protest is concern about inequality, unemployment, and better living. So I want to ask you, where do we begin? You can pick any country in Africa to make an illustration. Where does the government begin to address this growing protest that young people are choosing to express their dissatisfaction?
Discussion. The government, let me pick one government, Zimbabwe, for example. Let me pick areas that I know very well. The areas that I have ever experienced and helped governments, like the government of Zimbabwe. I have helped Mugabe, I helped even Mnangagwa up to today. Start talking, start sitting down and talk frankly with these people. Talk with the younger generation, educate them. The lack of civic education. We must teach civic education, that jobs can be created in this format or that format or this one. Most of these governments, you find corrupt officials, seriously, are not sitting down to talk with this younger generation. For us, we are going home. We are in the sunset. We need a generation that will replace people in Zimbabwe, in Uganda, in Kenya, in Nigeria, in all places in Ghana. Look, the Ghanaian demonstration, they have agreed to put them very nicely in a square, and they talk their problems, escort them to go home. They will not destroy property. In some of the places in Africa, it is horrible. Some of the people act so badly. Your place you have seen, my place you have seen. So we must start talking. We must start wider conversation, wider serious peace talks on the ground. What is going on? Governments must start asking questions. Where have we gone wrong? Why are there no jobs? Why are there a number of people who are not employed because of corruption? They must crack on corruption, especially your place is corruption. Everywhere you go is corruption. You find people with a lot of opulence, people giving out money when younger generations have nothing. This one cannot go well with the younger generation of ours that were produced who are here. So discussion, dialogue, engagement, containment, Those are the words that I see. In the case of Nigeria, you must clean ethnicity. There is a lot of ethnicity. There is a lot of discrimination. There is a lot of banditry. Terrorists are killing people.
David, since we're on that thought, I mean, you've said quite a lot about how we can address the situation generically, but let's look at the Nigerian situation, for instance. The protest is a day from today. That's August 1, if I'm not wrong. Do you think there's anything the government can do at this point, aside from all they've done? We know that they've tried to ask for, you know, what are the issues. They've tried to highlight what the government is doing and all of that. Beyond all of this, is there something you think that the government can do at the moment to forestall this protest from going ahead or encourage it?
The government should stop threats. I'm telling you. Sorry.
Bless you.
The Nigerian government should stop threats. Threats will not solve the problem. His Excellency, President Tinubu, should now sit and reconstitute himself and talk to these people. Because there are many, especially your place, we are worried. The whole of Africa, we are worried. You are millions. And if you come in all the streets of all these cities of Nigeria, the government will not kill all of you. So the army should not come to threaten. I saw the army chief of staff of Nigeria or the spokesman threatening people. That language, you will not manage these people. These people are not managed by threats. They are managed by persuasion, by discussion. Nigeria is not a military government. That a military man can come on, no, that a military man comes on television to threaten people. Nigeria has got a police.
Okay, so the way they're going is not the solution. We have about 2 minutes to wrap up. So I'd like you, I know this is reaching, but I have to ask it. Is there any possibility of the potential for regional and continental initiatives to address some of our shared challenges that is driving social unrest, bearing in mind the youth population?
Our regional and African organizations have collapsed. And unfortunately, the African Union is no more.
Sorry, but is there a potential, is there a possibility that there is an initiative that we can explore to help? Would you want to take maybe a glass of water? Okay.
I am, yes.
Okay, are you better now?
Yes, okay. I am.
Okay, so go ahead and speak to us. We know that the corruption is there, it's something we have to address, but might there be any initiative that has the potential to help us address our social challenges?
Yes, let's begin discussing, let's find the root cause as to why the younger generation is coming up today and telling you on first we are coming on the streets. There are several factors. One of them is food is lacking. 2, unemployment. 3, economic hardship. No jobs, no employment, no anywhere. There is nowhere where they want to go, they can't go. So let's start talking to them instead of talking at them. That is an initiative the government should do. Talk to them, not at them. Let's talk to them. Let's find out what people really need. And let governments cut their corruption, their opulence. Let governments invest money in social welfare of the states. Let's go back. Let's have community talking. Let's remove all forms of discrimination, of ethnicity, forms of oppression, forms of lack of democracy. Keep people space. Because we have accepted democracy. We have not gone anywhere. We don't have any other alternative. You either give them democracy, you give them space, and guide them without corruption. But if you are threatening them every day, if you are killing them every day, if you are going down, that will not go well.
All right, a word for the youth in 20 seconds. We're actually out of time. A word for the youths across the continent.
The continent I want to tell you, youth, all of us were in that hot blood. But the policy of engagement, positive engagement, to governments that listen, put down your demands. Violence alone, if you come, you destroy, it is your home, you are going to destroy it. If you protest peacefully. And to those also, the police, this protest with human nature. You are not killing animals in the bush. You are killing human beings. Don't shoot at the people. Just tell them, come with your protest, come with your documents, give us or read them and go home.
All right,
if
David.
You threaten them, it will not end well. Threats won't help at all, especially in Nigeria.
Thank you for speaking with us as always. We appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, Felicity. Thank you. God bless.
Bless you too.